Good evening, and welcome back to Breaking the Consensus, Protect Life's interview with people that don't make the news because the mainstream media doesn't want them, but have something interesting to say. Tonight, we are joined by a giant of pro-life politics in Ireland. She might be petite in stature, but she has the heart of a lion. I'm talking about Carol Nolan, the TD that all of the political pundits wrote off when she lost her party, lost her councillors. She was destined to lose her seat for being courageous enough to vote against every single stage of Harris's abortion bill. Carol Nolan, congratulations.
Thank you.
You did what Ivan Yates said you couldn't do.
Absolutely.
You retook your seat.
Yes, I'm absolutely delighted to be here tonight. So thank you for coming as well.
Carol, we're delighted to have you here in Portlaoise. It was a hard campaign.
It was tough, very tough, yes, very tough. A lot of organising and obviously a lot of putting structures together and building a team and training that team on the ground to do canvassing.
That must be really hard, to take new people in and train them and get them to canvass for you.
It was, but you know, the political will was there. They had the way, they wanted to see me elected, and I think that's half the battle, that when you have people who are genuinely behind you and share the same values. Yes, correct.
You had to do more than make a team. You had to deal with outright vicious criminal opposition. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I suppose, you know, what happened was hundreds of my posters went missing.
Hundreds?
Yeah. At the last count there last week, there was 400 posters gone. There were posters slashed in areas deliberately. And, you know, it was disheartening for the whole team as well as myself, and obviously unacceptable behaviour. Completely unacceptable because you hold a different view. Exactly. And it just goes to show like the viciousness and hatred that's out there simply because you hold a different view.
And that's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to. And that view is you are pro-life.
Yeah,
you have been incredibly courageous. Have the Gardaí been involved? Well,
reports have been made to the local authorities in Laois and Offaly and to the Garda stations also, yes.
I'm asking that because most people will know it is a criminal offence to steal or damage an election poster. So you got on with it, you knew this was happening. Did you think during the election you had a chance, despite what the pundits were saying?
I would be very strong-willed and very determined. And I love a challenge, nothing better than a challenge. I was involved in different levels of academic study for years before I went into politics. So I always loved a challenge and always wanted to, you know, prove a point. And certainly I did that a few weeks ago, but that's thanks to the people who helped me along the way.
You absolutely did prove that. You were the only woman on the 15 TDs that voted against the bill. You were returned, as were your 14 brave colleagues, cross-party. So that was an enormous achievement.
It was. It was fantastic. But I do want to say that it was thanks to the people of Laois and Offaly, and indeed the prayer group here in Portlaoise, who played a phenomenal role throughout the campaign. You know, they organised into a group and made sure that they contacted the other pro-life people.
They did more. They prayed and they worked.
Prayed, correct.
Yes.
Correct. They did.
What good, God-fearing people should do.
No, they were fantastic. They were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And Laois was good to you.
Laois was very good. Laois was very good.
No, Laois was good to you. You got something like 1,300 votes.
Just under 1,300.
Just under 13 votes out of Laois. But you're from Offaly.
Yes.
So are you going to be just stuck in Offaly now and they're not going to get a return for those votes?
No, absolutely not. I think this is my 4th time in this centre since the election, and I love coming here. And also just to say that I am doing constituency clinics. I did them a year and a half before any election took place in Clonaslee and Mountmellick. And I now will be starting up clinics in Mountrath, and I will have an office very, very soon, hopefully in the Mountmellick area. So I will ensure that there is a base there to represent people and to represent people who want representation from a TD who shares the same values as them. You know, that's important.
And you do share their values.
Absolutely.
And they voted for you for that reason. So you'll have an office in Mountmellick in the near future. You're already holding clinics. Do you have the times of those clinics for us?
Well, what happens is at the end of every month, I'll make sure that they're posted on social media and also in the Leinster Express going forward to make sure people know where I am and when I'm there.
So they'll be able to find you.
Be available.
Now, I'm asking you this because I think you have to fight, if you like, a different politics, you don't get a lot of media coverage.
No, I don't, but I'm lucky in the sense that I've found ways around it. I'm very strategic, and what I would do to get the word out is using social media and also distributing newsletters to show people the work I'm doing, because unfortunately I didn't get fair play in the media in the run-up to the election or prior to that, since I took the stand really that I took, and because it wasn't a populist thing to do, and because a lot of the media did shut down any debate and didn't want to know the other side of the
You
debate,
talked to us. You talked to us about this the last time we interviewed you, about the absolute rudeness, it went beyond bad manners of the media at the Dáil committee.
Yes, it did. That's correct. It was very, very bad at that time.
Shocking behaviour.
I felt, I was the only pro-life woman fighting on the committee.
Yes.
And, you expect respect. You mightn't agree with somebody, but you expect to get fair play and respect.
Well, you expect that the press gallery will at least be quiet while people are speaking.
Yes, it was disgraceful what went on. I mean, some of those journalists should be made resign. They were no way impartial.
No.
They were sending tweets out.
They were live tweeting in order to mock you.
In order to mock pro-life people, particularly myself on the committee, who shared a different view.
Yeah, because they don't see their job as being reporters or media, they see their job as campaigners.
Absolutely, and that's what they weren't able to draw that line. And what I found too, which was disheartening, was that they weren't able to act in a professional capacity and leave their own bias one side and simply just do their jobs, because that's what they're expected to do.
And that hasn't stopped?
No, it hasn't stopped. No, it hasn't. I don't get fair play in...
You don't appear on television, you don't appear on radio?
No, I don't.
Do you even get local radio stuff here?
From time to time, but it has been disappointing also to see at times that the newspapers don't recognise that I'm a TD, simply trying to do my job and represent people.
The newspapers try not to mention you, as far as I can see. And this isn't whinging. This is
the case, yes.
This is just, if you look at it, you're one of 160 TDs. You represent people. You did what the pundits said you couldn't do. Yet there was no story about that. That wasn't a story for them.
What appears to be happening is, it's shock or surprise when I get elected.
Oh my God.
Shock and surprise. Not, there's nobody saying we called it wrong.
Yes.
Which they should be doing.
Yes,
and
they
only
should.
rightly so.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't their homework done. They hadn't the research done properly on the ground. And they made assumptions at the end of the day. And those assumptions, I delighted in challenging them. And obviously
you love a challenge, as you told us.
Yeah, absolutely. But they should be honest enough and upstanding enough. I think they get more respect if they came out and said they called it wrong.
It's hard to give the likes of Ivan Yates credibility when he called it absolutely wrong and has never said, in Laois Offaly, I got it wrong, fair play to Carol Nolan.
No, obviously the bias is coming in there as well, and he can't leave that aside and do his job professionally. And like many of them,
they can't.
They're not able to do that, it appears.
This is why we're here tonight. We know we have a one-note media, most of whose practitioners are campaigners, not journalists. Carol, let me ask you the questions that they're not asking you. Where do you see this Dáil going? Are we going to get a government?
Well, hopefully so. I think, people have voted and there needs to be some form of a government. We all have responsibility in that regard. We now have a coronavirus, which is frightening for people. People are concerned. And we do need definitely to see some movement in this.
You don't think there will be an election again this year?
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think so. I don't think people want it, and surely they'll respect the people's wishes.
Would the results be any different?
I don't believe they would. No, I don't believe so. I think there has to be some effort made now to put a government together, and I know.
Does that mean that party leaders have to put their pride aside and maybe even put their short-term strategic interests for their party aside?
Absolutely, but I mean, really, they share a lot in common. I mean, what party stood up for life?
What party?
None of them. They have a lot in common.
Yes.
And I don't see any problem in why they can't get together, because in other countries you will have three parties who come together, as a coalition and run the country.
Yes, very regular.
And it is a regular occurrence. They need to move away from the traditional model because they've actually more in common than they have against each other.
In effect, they have more in common with each other now than they have with you or your voters.
Yes, that's true. That's very true.
They campaigned for abortion.
Yes, that's true.
among other things.
Absolutely.
Do you think the coronavirus may have concentrated minds, that a crisis of that magnitude might be concentrating minds?
I think so. They need to do it obviously out of the national interest, and in fairness to people who are concerned, they need to put a programme and a plan together very quickly. And I feel that we have been on the back foot, that, you know, what was stopping the health minister coming out weeks ago when this all started?
Well, that is actually a really good point. He's still the acting health minister.
He's still the acting health minister, correct? Yeah.
You got a torrid and terrible time from the Irish media. Do you think that Harris has been protected by the Irish media?
Absolutely. It's very obvious, isn't it? You know, they can do no wrong.
He brought in abortion for them. He gave them their sacrament.
Absolutely, yeah. He's singing from the same hymn sheet. Yeah. And now that's not to say that there aren't people in the media who share the same values as myself. But the only problem is they're few and far between.
Yeah.
You know, it's
so
really
Harris isn't examined. He isn't held accountable. And now we have a national crisis.
Correct. And he seems to be getting off the hook, correct? I would feel so. I mean, why wasn't an action put together? An action plan weeks ago when this
It's
started.
not that this is a surprise. We've watched the virus spread from China. We've watched it spread through Italy. Harris talked about freedom of movement when other countries were shutting down flights.
That's right. Yeah, I do feel certainly that as a health minister he hasn't stepped up to the plate yet again. He hasn't shown the same vigour that he showed when he was trying to bring in abortion laws. It's very obvious really as a minister that he is failing. Yeah,
if Simon Harris had the same urge to stop coronavirus as he had to bring in abortion, we might be in a much better position now.
Absolutely, yes, we would.
So that's one aspect of it. We have a crisis. We have a minister that we don't trust. We're struggling to get a government, but the Dáil continues. And when there is a government, you'll be a working TD.
Yes.
Now, I know you never talk about being a woman in politics. Okay, so I'm going to be utterly unfair to you because I believe there is a difference between men and women, and their roles. Is the Dáil a difficult place for a working mother?
Well, I have to say I'm honoured to be re-elected as one of the women in there. But I do take your point that yes, it can be challenging for women. But women aren't putting themselves forward as they should be in politics, and I feel that certainly that may be a barrier. But if we look at other sectors too, like education, women aren't putting themselves forward for professorships or anything in universities either, or promotions, or
You were an
CEO
academic,
jobs.
You're the headmistress in a school.
That's right, yes.
You did apply, you did go forward.
I did, very much so, yeah.
And you think that if more women did this,
I think so, and if they were given the support. Now, I'm lucky because I have a very supportive family. Yes. I live close to my husband's family also. He is a shift worker with Bord na Móna, so he wouldn't be gone every single day of every week.
And he's obviously a very supportive husband.
He's very supportive, and was from a big family of 9 as well, which probably helps.
It definitely does. If you want to get support inside a family, get a man who's used to having children and minding them.
Absolutely, that's true.
It works.
That's true, yeah.
But, the Dáil itself, what are the hours like?
The hours can vary. They can be generally long. And I suppose it's the lack of structure that compared to my previous job as a teacher, I knew when I'd be finished.
There were times.
There were times and obviously a schedule.
The Dáil can run on.
But the Dáil can run on, that's correct.
That makes it hard because children need to see you.
Yes,
don't they?
They do.
And that's not to make any special case or anything else, but the fact is, it's difficult. How many women are in the Dáil now?
There's 37.
37 out of 160.
Yeah.
It's very low.
It is still very low, and I do feel certainly that there are barriers there.
Well, of course, when we see how you were treated by the Irish media, it's hard to see how other women sharing your values would come forward.
It is, but I feel it has to be done and needs to be done, and I would certainly be encouraging women to do so, because we can't just stay quiet and go away. That's certainly not what I want to see. If we want to see change, and we badly need in this country, and want to see life valued again, so we need to encourage those women to put themselves forward for election.
There's another election on at the moment. The Shannon Election is going. What do you think should happen there?
Well, I think that we need to do what we did in the general election, in the sense of like lots of prayer groups and pro-life people came together and got in behind the pro-life TDs, and I think the same thing needs to happen now with the senators. I know that we're depending on them for leadership, and we work very well with the pro-life senators, myself and the group of pro-life TDs. We would dearly love to see those senators returned, as they deserve to be returned.
Who in particular is good there?
Well, I know that Ronan Mullen has put himself forward again, which I'm glad to see, on the university panel. So it's open to NUI graduates who are registered to vote in the Shannon elections.
So that's Galway, UCD.
It'd be all the NUI.
All the NUI universities. Any graduate of that can vote for Ronan.
Once they're registered to vote in the Shannon elections.
Is it too late to vote to register now?
That would need to be checked. I believe it is. But just check it in case.
But if people get a ballot paper?
If people get a ballot paper, certainly, I would just ask that they put Ronan number one.
Do you think that the prayer groups would have a role again in reaching out to graduates that they know?
Absolutely.
Maybe even older graduates who might not be that realise this is going on?
Absolutely, yes. I think there is definitely a role, and obviously keeping Ronan in your prayers would be important also.
Absolutely.
I'm sure he's returned.
Yes, it's vital.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because just as it was important to get the 15 and especially yourself elected, it would be regarded as a great victory for the abortion side if they could get rid of Ronan Mullen.
Absolutely, absolutely. And he has been targeted in a vicious campaign also.
Yeah.
So just to say that he needs more help now than ever.
It's probably too late this time for us to find new candidates for the Senate. The election is on.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
It's late in the day, yeah.
Where should we be going with politics, Carol?
We need to start at a local level, and I think we need to build, make sure we have teams to support individuals who would love to put themselves forward for the local elections. And I know in 4 years' time we have that opportunity. But the way I see it is we have to start from the very bottom rung and ensure that we have people, that we're putting those people who share the same values as ourselves forward for election, because politics is local. It starts at a local level, and obviously TDs depend on the councillors coming through also to make sure that they can work with them, and that we have cohesion as we do with the senators. It's so important, and I believe that it has to start at a local level.
So this is going to happen in 4 years' time. The local elections will happen. We really need to be looking for those candidates now. We do, yeah, absolutely. We do need to be looking for those candidates now, because it does take time to build a team and to plan. And there's so much involved. Like there's finance, there's putting a plan and helping the person achieve a profile also, and helping them build a profile. So that's you built a campaign fairly quickly. I did. I mean, you were taken out of Sinn Féin in 2018, wasn't it? It was 2018, March actually, 2018, so it's just gone 2 years. So you really only had 2 years to put everything in place. Now, effectively, you had a micro campaign, hadn't you? I did. I had a very small campaign. We had a pool of 30 people, 24 canvassers and 6 people then who took charge of the posters around the different towns in both counties. So it was a small campaign, but people were very focused and very driven. So it was hugely effective. It was hugely effective. All of those people worked hard. So if a potential councillor could get 24, if you can get elected in a 2-county constituency with 24 people, it should be possible to get councillors elected if they can get. It's very possible. It's very possible. And I mean, I only had a short time frame. I had less than 2 years. You had less than 2 years to put the whole thing together. Yeah. We did it. I had a great team behind me, and I want to commend each and every one of them, and the people who came out from Laois and Offaly to canvass on the ground. I want to acknowledge their support, their help, because every door that was knocked, it was very, very important. And it was tough because we've 2 rural counties, so it was impossible to get everywhere. And in a sense, I was at a disadvantage in being an independent, because there was many rural areas that I couldn't reach due to the time constraints. I mean, there was 3 weeks of a campaign. There's only so many doors you can knock on. There's only so many going 10 hours a day, which I was. I'd leave at home at 9 o'clock in the morning and wouldn't be back. You must have been exhausted at the end of it. But it was a 10-hour day. Yeah. I was exhausted, yeah. I suppose winning... Still am. Yeah. But winning is a great antidote to exhaustion, isn't it? Absolutely, absolutely. We won't even contemplate what losing feels like. No. But winning is, it's everything.
It is, absolutely. And it was thanks to the team that got in behind me that made that possible, in addition to the hard-working staff in my offices, who I also want to mention tonight, and also the pro-life national movement were very, very good.
Yes.
And were very effective.
And we often criticise the national movement.
Very good.
We're quick to criticise.
We're very quick, and maybe too quick.
Yeah.
But I think there is great work being done there
by
Family and Life and by the Life Institute and the PLC, that people don't see half of what goes on, or the dedicated volunteers who are in there working day and night. And I believe we are starting to see a change, because getting 15 in TDs back, mostly independents.
Well, it was mostly independents on a day when the independent representation halved in the Dáil.
It did. Yes, that's right.
So it was an astonishing
It was very good, and
result.
I mean, the parties were doing better in the polls also.
That's right.
So, the wind was behind the parties. The media were behind the parties, very much so.
And the media certainly weren't behind you.
No, they weren't. No. Or the other
But
pro-life TDs.
the other pro-life TDs are male, so in a sense, you're a bigger reproach to them. You're a woman and you voted against abortion. For them, this is somehow worse, isn't it?
Maybe, maybe. I would hope that they will just get beyond that point and give fair play and be impartial and be professional in their jobs, because it's far from professional.
You're a magnificent optimist, Carol.
I am. That's
that
what keeps
Irish
me going.
journalists would get fair.
Well, I think if they're called out on it, they may have no choice.
This is true.
Do you know?
If they're held to account, we see that Mr. Harris is not held to account. Absolutely. And that's where you get bad performance, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, I feel they're not held to account, and they're not challenged enough, and that's why
this Dáil does appear to be going to run at least a year or two. It could run a lot longer.
It could.
You're going to be in there as a TD. You're going to be working hard. Are there things you want to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us some of the areas?
Well, coming from an education background, I'd be looking for, fairness for children who come from disadvantaged backgrounds. And one of the things I did call for before the Dáil went down in January was to make sure that there were homeschool liaison officers for children in emergency accommodation. We know that we have 4,000 children in emergency accommodation, and I feel that those children need the support. The schools also need the support, and they need the guidance in how to deal with the problem. And I honestly feel that that should be done in order to break the cycle of disadvantage and to ensure that those children are getting a high quality education. As is stated in our Education Act, they're legally entitled to a high quality education. So I would be very much pushing for that to happen. I would also be looking for the Disadvantage Committee to be reinstated. It was set up under the 1998 Act, and I feel if the committee was set up again, it would do fantastic work for children who are, from disadvantaged backgrounds and disadvantaged areas. I do feel it's something that needs to happen. I'm also a rural TD, so I'm constantly advocating for rural communities and for agriculture. We have seen the bad treatment of our beef and suckler farmers, and we also have serious concerns over the CAP budget. It's very important that there's no cuts to that budget. It's very important that farmers get fair play and get the supports they badly need.
That's a fairly comprehensive programme. There's a lot in there. I think we forget very easily that of the 10,000 who are homeless, almost half are children.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they have particular problems, don't they?
They do, they do.
I mean, how does a child who's homeless do homework?
Correct.
If you don't have a home.
Correct, and there's no plan or no forward thinking with this. And I mean, this isn't something that happened overnight either.
No.
This is something that has gone on for too long, for many years at this stage.
The housing crisis has been building for at least 10 years.
And there has been nothing put in place for those children, which is making the situation worse.
Is there a chance that if this Disadvantage Committee was put in place, that's a Dáil committee?
Yes, that
is there a chance you would be on that?
No, it wouldn't be. It would be a committee that would advise the government on policy.
Right, so it's an advisory committee.
An advisory committee. They would have been responsible for the DESH programme,
which is a huge
for those
success.
Initiatives which were very, very successful. And I believe that that's what needs to happen, that at least then we have planning and some forward thinking in terms of how to help these children.
The CAP issues are really serious, given that with Brexit there's a hole in the budget.
There is, there is.
How is that going to be made up?
Well, look, it has to be. I mean, we cannot have Europe insisting on cutting our CAP payments Irish
with farmers
agriculture.
already struggling.
Absolutely, and it's a huge area of our economy that isn't getting the proper support.
And of course, it would be a disaster for Laois Offaly, because Laois Offaly is a particularly rural constituency.
It would be, it would. And also, Europe talks about generational renewal being the biggest threat to farming. They have to ensure, therefore, that the CAP budget is protected in order to bring in younger people.
We can't bring in younger people into farming.
Correct.
If there isn't a stable CAP budget that's paying for the thing.
That's right.
Particularly given the standards that the EU insists upon.
Absolutely. That's what I'd be looking for. In addition to that, I have said on the record a number of times that I completely oppose the Mercosur trade deal, which would squeeze Irish beef out of the EU markets.
By bringing in more from South American beef, cheap South American beef,
Yeah.
which is held to no standard at all.
Absolutely. So I
either on
believe
hormones, antibiotics, or traceability.
Yes, correct. And I believe, agriculture needs to be protected, defended, and, made stronger, because it is the backbone of the economy.
Particularly the rural economy.
Absolutely, and has seen us through the bleakest of times in the past.
There are threats to, as you say, your voters shared values with you, and probably that's been a revolution in the sense that people are now voting on values. But there are threats to those values, aren't there, in the common Dáil?
Absolutely.
Such like a deepening of the abortion regime, very likely a vote on euthanasia. Let's just talk about abortion first.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a possibility that that an incoming government will attempt to scrap things like the 3-day waiting period?
Anything's possible. When we saw the extreme legislation that went through, and when we look back now and see what they did in a short space of time, we have to say that anything's possible. But that's where we need to make sure that we're strong as a pro-life group movement around the country, and that we have our people advocating and representing us inside in the Dáil.
And we have, in the sense that, particularly because you got re-elected, and we saw people like Zapone, O'Connell and Coppinger lose, do you think that helps?
Somewhat, but it doesn't share, I suppose it doesn't take away from the fact that the three biggest parties in there were responsible and pushed this regime. Every party in the Dáil, if you look at even the smaller parties, they also played a part in it, and many of them went out campaigning on the ground. So there are worries there.
The local Minister for Justice, Charlie Flanagan.
That's right.
Campaigned. It is likely there will be a vote on euthanasia. How do you think that will go in the current Dáil? Do we have a chance of defeating it?
I would be concerned. I think as a country we've lost what was once dear to us, protecting life. We really have.
Yes.
And I would feel again that I suppose the TDs and senators can only do so much, but it comes back to the people who vote if there is a referendum on this issue.
It's who you put in, isn't it?
It is, because they advocate and again can't leave their own bias one side. If a party feels that a certain issue is popular, and that's what it came down to, was populism.
Cheap populism.
That's what it was. They felt that
they
were going to gain by bringing in such a regime.
Didn't work out so well for Fine Gael.
No, it didn't. It didn't indeed.
Not even terribly well for Fianna Fáil in the end.
That's right.
But your courage worked out very well for you, and we're delighted.
Thank you.
Carol Nolan, thank you very much for your heroic stand, and congratulations on getting re-elected. We hope that she has a long career in Irish politics.